panel is entitled Post-Pandemic World, Reality versus Illusions. Fundamentally, this panel is about change. And as the great Greek philosopher taught us, change is reality. Right? You can't step into the same river twice because nature is constantly in change. And so this panel has a group of people with really interesting backgrounds, ranging from futurists and technologists, developers of innovative technology and robotics, to people at the forefront of responding to COVID-19 and leading their public administrations in doing so. And yes, I should ask the speakers, close your microphones. And if you're not speaking, also close your microphone. I can see 6 we're supposed to maybe have a 7th. This is only a 45-minute panel, and we have six great speakers. So everybody, please maybe limit your remarks to about maybe 6 minutes, and we can have a couple minutes for questions at the end, if that's okay. My name is Matt Bryza. I'm a former US diplomat. I now live in Istanbul. I ended my career in diplomacy as ambassador to Azerbaijan. And so Azerbaijan's a very important place to me, to my family, really shaped my career. And I first came to Azerbaijan, first visited in 1998. And it's just unbelievable, speaking of change, how the country has transformed itself and how Baku has become one of the most beautiful cities I've ever been to. And our first speaker, Madam Minister Sevinç Hasanova, has lived through this change in very senior positions in either the state treasury or in the Ministry of Economics or Economic Development. She's currently Deputy Minister of Economy. Actually, speaking of change, she or you, Sevinç Hanım, Madam Minister, you've held that position several times, but when ministries were differently structured and were named something else. But you have been at the forefront of the budgeting process in Azerbaijan for quite some time, for 16 years. And you were in the ministry, in fact, and developing macroeconomic planning for the government of Azerbaijan, just as Azerbaijan was coming of age, if you will, in terms of its oil revenues in 2006 when the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline opened. So I know you're going to tell us a bit about how Azerbaijan has responded to COVID-19. I hope you'll tell us a bit as well about the change you've led and experienced over these distinguished years you've had at senior levels of the Azerbaijani government. Please, Madam Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Bryza. First of all, as being a member of the hosting country, I would like to welcome all the panelists. And also I would like to thank ASAN service for organizing such a wonderful forum. And also I would like to thank you very much for such a wonderful presentation. I think that was the best presentation I ever had before. Thank you once more. Yes, this is very unprecedented, I would say, and we are hearing this world every day, unprecedented momentum in the history of the world, I would say, this COVID pandemic circumstances. This actually turned into the combination of crisis in the health sector, but also it turned out to the economic sector as well. And of course, from the experience I have seen from early 19th to today's, that circumstances could be maybe somehow compared to collapse of the Soviet Union, that period of time when we really had very big drop in the economic development, inflation, which was 1,000%, and 100, 200%, 50% reduction in the GDP, collapsing on all the relations with the former Soviet Union countries. But that was the only economic part of that and political side. But now we have health issues, which is depend on the which is related to the life of the people, and in our country, that in these circumstances, the people, their health issue was put it on the first place, And I'm really proud that Azerbaijan is among the countries which are very promptly replied on the challenges of the COVID pandemic. And I'm sure we are and we will continue to be among the countries least affected negatively by this COVID pandemic. Actually, the situation in the world, which are discussed from yesterday's to today's, is not so positive. As we all know, the forecast of the international organization is reduced, and many countries will have this year negative economic growth, and due to pandemic, but as well as the resulted from that the oil price shock. Azerbaijan also will be negatively impacted from this crisis and pandemics. More than 160 countries will be in the recession this year. However, of course, there are very wide risk for the negatives to continue, like more unemployment, as we already observed in all over the world, more debt, particularly for the developing country, emerging country, and as a result, more poverty could emerge for some countries. And I think we have already observed that in many places, but at the same time, there is opportunities to shift faster to knowledge economy, as we are doing together. I think probably without this pandemic, we wouldn't be able in such a very short period of time organize this wonderful forum for discussing these issues. And I will not be able to see Mr. Breiser, whom I haven't seen probably for 10 years. Actually, I'm glad to see you again. I would like to pass hello to Zeino. Yeah, so this is a positive things which came out from this pandemic, but there are more opportunities to shifting to more digitalized, to more knowledge economy, to implement economic policies in favor of more efficient, more resilient, and more transparent economies. And I hope Azerbaijan, my country, would benefit from that chance and will put more reforms in that areas. Actually, the questions for this panel was what would be the most needed actions illustrating post-pandemic world, how to secure sustainability and resilience. I think the answer on these questions could come from the another questions. What kind of world we would like to have for our children? Do we want a world which is developing faster, slower? Do we want the world to be more open or more closed? Do we want more trade between the countries, or closing the gaps and working only for the domestic consumption and closing the world trade? So all these questions need to be considered when we are thinking about the post-pandemic period. Actually, the way how we could describe this momentum is radical uncertainty. So it's very difficult to judge what will be in the post-pandemic world. But from yesterday's discussion and from the discussion which is happening every day in all over the world about the results of this pandemic, we could see that this pandemic itself already shades the light of the priorities for countries, for people. I think the first priority could be that we need to be able to better manage and to be ready for crises and disasters. All the country, including Azerbaijan, should make all their efforts to be ready by the time of any crisis started, to have all the resources allocated, to have all the emergency required, to have all the at least procedures to be ready to tackle all these challenges of the crisis. Why that? For last 10, 15 years, from the time you mentioned I'm employed in Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Economy, I have seen number of crises. Actually, my experience is from 93, it's 27 years I'm working in the government, and for that period, I have gone from so many crises. So it is time to be fully ready for the next and to be able to tackle its challenges. I think Azerbaijan here has very good experience. As one of the example could be the ASAN service experience. This is social services provided to the public, and it's very efficient. It has recognized widely in the world, and we share this experience with other countries as well. And during this crisis, I'm proud to say that my government, headed by His Excellency President Ilham Aliyev, have addressed the issues of the pandemic quite well, and many things have been done and have been done rightly on time. We had put together action plan for tackling health issues as well as non-health issues, social security of the people, support for the businesses, as well as post-pandemic actions, what we will be doing after that. Government had adopted 10 programs. Estimated cost is about 3% of GDP. It is comparable to the world. And the result is we do not have widespread coronavirus here. The next things which arises from this pandemic and which is a priority from my point of view is maintaining macro stability. Macro stability is crucial for the all economic development, and here sustainability and efficiency is coming to the first place. New sustainable revenue, sustainable expenditure policies should be pursued. New tax policies to stimulate diversification and digitalization. At the same time, we need to reassess our existing tax privileges, and if they are not efficient, eliminate that. For many developing countries, that issue will be a problem and priorities to deal with. I think for Azerbaijan, we have quite good strategy, and we have very low indebted, and we have good reserves from, from the beginning of oil revenue. That's really helped us during the pandemic, and it will be helping us in the medium to longer term. And of course, after pandemic, the world will need to look for the new economic growth models, for the new growth points, and acknowledging the great uncertainty. A good scenario envisages that soft opening in May could be the case, or in more adverse scenario, we would see the closure extended to several more months, and then the scenarios of development will be more negative. For a responsible restart of economy, I think governments in all over the world and here in Azerbaijan will need to think about more efficient, sustainable, and resilient economic development. And here we will be facing with the more strengthened role of the government in economic opening, in bringing more transparency and fighting shadow economy. Those are in the agenda of Azerbaijan as well, you know, for a long time. But now we have a new Minister of Economy, Mr. Jabarov, whom you probably, I'm sure, know for a long time. And he's very keen on transparency and accountability. And that also will make the countries and my country as well more resilient to any negative shocks coming out from outside. Actually, the world is too independent. Am I speaking too much? My 6 minutes?
Yeah, well, we're supposed to wrap up in a half an hour, so maybe because we had all these other nice people.
Okay, then I just would like to stress that in this restarting in new economy, the development, innovation will really play the key role. We have identified the other sectors for development, but innovation will be the major line, and digitalization of the economy will be among the priorities in Azerbaijan and I think in all over the world. And for this purpose, I just would like to mention to the audience that in January this year, government of Azerbaijan and World Economic Forum has agreed on opening Fourth Industrial Revolution Center in affiliate in Baku, and I hope that this will be a good platform for knowledge sharing and on Fourth Industrial Revolution, but not only for Azerbaijan, for all the regional countries. And, we will be glad to cooperate with Turkey as well, and with you if you are interested in that issue. And I hope I will be hearing more about the digitalization from our speakers. Ian Khan, I know good on that, and other speakers. So again, it is a challenging time, and I hope we together will be able to overcome these challenges and will speed up in the new way to a more sustainable and more resilient world. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Madam Minister, for a beautiful presentation that laid out the big picture issues for the entire globe and helps us all appreciate some of the remarkable changes that you've helped lead in Azerbaijan. And I want to, of course, thank President Aliyev, thank Minister Jabarov as well, who is one of my favorite people on earth, and thank ASAN, because ASAN is one of the great success stories of Azerbaijan. I remember about 9 years ago when I was in the presidency, the office, and I was told for the first time about this new push by the government of Azerbaijan to establish e-government as a way, as you were describing, Sevin Chanim, to eliminate the shadow economy, to reduce the number of interfaces where corruption can happen. You've done it. By doing this, you've made Azerbaijan much more resilient, the government, just as you're saying, much more resilient by harnessing technology. And so I think, and finally, I wanted to highlight that you mentioned a great phrase. I think you said radical uncertainty. We're in the issue of radical uncertainty as we look to the future. So that's a perfect, I think, transition to Ian Khan. Ian, who is a futurist, who is going to help us understand the big post-pandemic trends in our future. Ian, as you can read his biography, but he's been featured on CNN and TEDx. He's spoken there 3 times. He's a documentary filmmaker. He's written 7 or 8 books. So Ian, please, I'm very excited to hear you not predict what the future is going to be. That's not possible, but to lay out the big ideas. And I also, before I sign off, Sevin Chanim, warm greetings from my wife, Zaino. Thank you very much for acknowledging her. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you, Matt. I hope everybody can hear me clear. I will take very little time, given there's other speakers who would like to speak as well, but I'll make very short remarks. I mean, today we undoubtedly live in unprecedented times. We've heard this so many times. This is the news. This is what we all are living across the world. And no matter how many times we hear this, it is important to recognize that this era that we're seeing today has not happened in any of our lifetimes, and hopefully it never happens again. We often hear stories about the Spanish flu, but that has happened over 100 years ago when the world of technology was still in its, it didn't even exist. And the innovation and ideas and solutions and things didn't come to the market like they are happening today. I really believe that today we live not just in unprecedented times because of the challenges we face, but because also of the opportunities that we have through technology, through innovation, and by doing some things. Given that COVID-19 pandemic and the state of the world it has created, I have just very short remarks to make with respect to the effectiveness that we can have in bringing the world together as one rather than just the destructive nature of COVID-19 and what it's doing to the world in general. I believe there's many things we can do. Ideas are there's tons and tons of ideas that are being shared across the world right now. I'd like to just focus on three things. Number one, that the COVID-19 pandemic has changed how we engage, how we communicate, how we send a message to other people in the world, and it has questioned the way we have traditionally done things, communicated, again, delivered our message to the world. With the rise of work from home and the ability to work remotely being pushed down on us, we are finding that the world can actually run on a different format in many cases. Here we are connected from different parts of the world, and we're talking about government and government services and the challenges at that level. And so, my request to everyone attending and viewing this conference is to start thinking about how to reach people in a different way and how to change the norms and practices that can be improved and where efficiency can be created. The pandemic has forever changed the way we will communicate, and we must run with it, and we must implement all of these changes to make our work, our governments, our programs more efficient. So that's engagement. Number two is people. With COVID-19, we have come to realize that people are at the center of everything. During this pandemic, governments, agencies, healthcare departments, municipalities, cities, countries, private and public sector are trying to do just one thing: save people, protect people, and ensure the safety of their respective communities. The future of the world is about the next generation. And while, I believe my time is another 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but it's all about the next generation as well, because we'll not be there for the next 100 years, but the next generation will be. And so let's focus on where we are headed. The pandemic is changing the way we should work together. So people are everywhere. People are the central focus of everything. And that changes the way many people think. Number three is execution. I would really like to stress the idea of what execution really means, the execution of our vision, ideas that we have, and bringing them to the world. Many times we create a lot of plans, we create strategies, we have actions and things we should implement, but sometimes we fall short because of execution. Sometimes managers don't do things. Sometimes employees don't perform tasks. Sometimes leaders don't take action. And sometimes some other person didn't do the thing that they were supposed to do. Everything at the end of the day boils down to execution. And if we don't execute, we get nothing. So I think we're in the era of execution now. We want to do, and this pandemic is pushing us to do things in a very different way, because everything now is connected. The entire world is now connected on one purpose and one purpose alone. I'd like to conclude with the remark that today COVID-19 is challenging the way we do things and the way we create value for the world. In the future, we cannot deny the fact that some other kind of challenge may present itself to humanity. This could be a natural disaster, another pandemic, healthcare crises, or some other unknown thing that we cannot even consider today. What is important is uh, how we deal with change, how we adapt to change. And I just want to conclude and finish by the very famous saying that says, change is a constant, but we also have to keep on improving ourselves, taking a step ahead, jumping from one place to the other to a higher level as a collective humanity, as a nation, as a region. So thank you so much to ASAN and the government of Azerbaijan for having us all here, for organizing this forum, And I'm sure these conversations will live on online on the internet to inspire others forever, for the rest of time, for them to see how we came together, what we did, and how we ended up changing the world. Thank you so much for having me. Over to you, Matt.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for those very inspiring, deep insights that are quite profound. As you were speaking them, I was reflecting and applying them to my own life, and how I have an environmental solutions company here in Istanbul, small joint venture with a Finnish company. And I was realizing as you were speaking how we've been able to do, or we've sort of gravitated to exactly what you're saying. Employing technology to be connected, focusing on the people, our relationships feel so much stronger, and then using the people connections and the technology to execute and to adapt our business to survive. So, yeah, when I first hear those grand concepts, I'm wondering, wait, are those too grand? No, that is wisdom. Thank you, and thank you for bringing us back to Heraclitus, who taught us that change is reality. Thanks very much again. I'd next like to turn to Sarah Lamrani. Sarah, who's a department director in Morocco's Ministry of Economy, Finance, and Administration. Sarah also has a background in technology. She has an engineering degree in computer science. Sarah played a big role in the development of the e-government strategy of the government of Morocco. But I understand, Sarah, today you're going to tell us more about how your government, what practical steps it's taken in response to COVID-19. Please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Breza. So greetings from Morocco. First of all, I want to thank the governments of Azerbaijan and ASAN for organizing the forum. This forum comes under exceptional circumstances marked by the spread of the coronavirus pandemic in most countries, and the confinement of more than 3 billion people, and the disruption of the economic and social order on a planetary scale. So I will present the main measures taken by the Kingdom of Morocco to counter the COVID-19 pandemic and to guarantee citizens access to basic public services. I will also outline the possible scenarios for the post-pandemic period. So in Morocco, guided by the vision of His Majesty the King Mohammed VI, we have implemented an integrated action plan to counter the spread of this pandemic and to cope with the economic and social impacts generated by this crisis. The country has been placed under a state of health emergency, and the borders have been locked, and general confinement has been decreed since March 20, as soon as the first cases has appeared. In addition, all the vital forces of the nation have been mobilized to support the populations most affected by the slowdown in economic activity. In particular, through the creation of a special fund for the management of the coronavirus pandemic initiated by His Majesty and created to address the uncertain national and social economic situation. These early preventive measures have enabled Morocco to avoid the worst indeed. The kingdom has more healings, so around 50%, than deaths, and recorded around 2.9% death rates, while the world average is 7%. In addition to these preventive measures, an integrated crisis management governance system has been made with the creation of 3 levels of committees, the multi-stakeholder steering committee to monitor the epidemiologic situation, a national scientific and technical committee attached to the Ministry of Health, and economic vigilance committee supervised by the Ministry of Economy and Finance, whose role is to anticipate the direct and indirect economic repercussions of the COVID-19. And the plan action is concerned 3 fields: health, social, and economic aspects, in addition to some measures to support and accompany people. Regarding the health aspects, Morocco has adapted its medical device in terms of infrastructure with new hospitals and places where to manage and to treat the coronavirus disease, and these actions have been accompanied by a continuous increase in the budget allocated to the health sector. Furthermore, the Ministry of Health has established a credible communication policy which daily reports on the progress of the disease and hygiene recommendations. I would like also to underline that Morocco produces locally masks for all the population. It has now crossed the production of 10 million masks per day, which allows him to ensure self-sufficiency, but also to begin to export them. Regarding the support and accompaniment aspects, teleworking and e-learning have been adopted as measures ensuring flexibility and risk prevention, respectively for civil servants, but also for school and university students. In addition, the public sector has taken several actions to guarantee a minimum service to users. These include the development and promotion of online administrative services, limiting physical reception of citizens. To this end, several public administrations, social and pension systems, courts, tax administration, etc., have used information and communication technologies to offer users the possibility of enjoying their service without traveling or having to travel to have them. At the same time, measures have been taken to reduce the social effects of the COVID-19. A total of 5.2 million of people, families, benefits from financial assistance provided for the COVID-19 Special Fund. This action affected employees in the formal sector as well as families working in the informal sector. So the compensation of employees declared as the National Society Security and also who's working in the informal sector have benefits from the aid. In addition, special attention was paid to vulnerable groups with dedicated problems, the promotion of local services and support NGOs whose projects aim to caring about these categories. And given the impacts of the health crisis of national economy, several initiatives in terms of basic products, food, energy, etc., especially following the shutdown on the crisis of the tourism sector and other relevant sectors in Morocco. In addition to these provisions, small and medium enterprises and the liberal professions in difficulty have benefits from a battery of measures, including the reduction of social charges, credits without fees or penalties, tax benefits, etc. To be not long. In the same direction, the expenditure of the state budgets for 2020 year was exclusively directed towards the priority related to the management of the crisis. So the proactive approach with which Morocco has managed the crisis and the leadership of His Majesty has enabled us to avoid worst scenarios. In fact, the spirit of responsible citizenship and solidarity, the creativity and the capacity for innovation, as well as the dynamics which have emerged in our country in these circumstances, present many lessons, assets, and positive examples. So at the same time, we have witnessed a transformation of our society. Indeed, the change in the customs of modern consumer news, the accelerated developments of digital technology, the emergence of a collective intelligence, etc., and new habits by a large number of citizens are all factors that our post-COVID-19 national strategies will integrate. We are aware that this crisis will leave indelible marks and that the recovery will require a lot of time and can only be gradual. It is with in mind that we set out to define the scenarios for emerging crisis. Thus, a first step will concern the gradual return of the different sectors to exercise their activities in coordination with the timetable and the procedures. And the second step, on the other hand, will involve the implementation of appropriate and renewable mechanisms. However, whatever the scenario to be adopted, the public services will have to see their organization, their mode of operation, and their service offer adapted accordingly. The objective is to guarantee the continuity of potential services. The recovery scenarios must be built on a more social vision than an economic one. to give new inputs to the health sector, to activities that generate employment and income, and the national education system. So, to finalize, beyond a simple crisis, this pandemic constitutes a break with current paradigms and models. It seems obvious that any strategy after it will have to integrate the virtues of collective action and the reposition to the place of human in the development equation. Thank you.
Hmm. Thank you, Sarah, for a comprehensive analysis and presentation of how Morocco, inshallah, has weathered this COVID storm relatively well with such a low death rate. Congratulations to us all that you've been so successful. And again, you made the point at the end about how the situation is absolutely unprecedented for you, for all of us. And we really do need to look to innovative ways to reform our public administration systems, to use technology as we look to the future, to be prepared and better prepared than I hate to say my own country has been. So as we turn back to the future and technology, I'd like to turn then to Tansu Yen, who's my neighbor, sort of, on the other side of the Bosporus. I'm in Istanbul, so is he. Tansu is, he's vice president of a company it's a robotic software and artificial intelligence company. It's called UiPath, and he's overseeing the business in 100 different countries. I mean, your title is vice president for Europe, as we were saying, but you've got almost every country on earth under you. And Tansu Bey, his professional background is in telecommunications tech. He worked for Hewlett Packard, he worked for Microsoft Turkey, worked for Turkcell Ukraine, Turkcell Belarus. And I love the way you summarize what your speech is going to be about. So I'm just going to read your sentence. It's to understand how artificial intelligence is shaping the fourth industrial revolution rapidly because of COVID-19, much sooner than expected, and carrying us to a fifth industrial revolution where humans and robots will be working together. Tansu, please.
So thank you very much. So I've been to Azerbaijan for the first time in my life last year. Amazing country. Congratulations. I mean, it was just way beyond my expectations. So modern, amazing food, history is there, you have everything. And when I'm in Azerbaijan, I feel like it's my home country because we are from the same roots. And the treatment that you see in terms and so on is amazing. And congratulations how you have fought against COVID-19 with such small percentage of cases. Big congratulations. So as we are short of time, I'm going to keep my speech just to the point, just to the ballots, in line with the topic that you have already mentioned. So the thing is, COVID recovery will be digital. We should not forget this. And I've been talking to many C-level people in the government, in the companies, etc. And I was always talking about the future. And I can assure you, I'm sure in Azerbaijan, in the United States, everywhere, all the companies have a minimum like 3 to 5 years digital transformation plan. But now, you know what we see? All this plan has been put forward and even implemented over the course of last 2 months up to a big extent. And even, if this would not have been a meeting about COVID-19 effects, etc., I would have most probably spoken the things which going to happen in future. This time I will only add a few more things. First of all, the fourth industrial revolution has been defined as a combination of IoT, artificial intelligence, robots, what else, virtual reality, big data, etc. But now it's 100% certain when we go to fifth industrial revolution, we're going to speak about fourth industrial revolution about artificial intelligence. And that's it. In my opinion, and in my strong opinion, artificial intelligence is the gold or petroleum of any country. And I was very happy to see, I spoke to many startup companies and C-level people in Azerbaijan. There is a big interest for artificial intelligence. And I would like to thank to Azerbaijan for even inviting me to Azerbaijan. And I hope I will be coming again after this all this COVID-19 lockdowns, etc. The thing is, future is shaped based on two things. It's about contactless economy. Okay, contactless economy meaning commerce, remote commerce, the way you run the commerce. Don't think your commerce just about e-commerce. It's any kind of commerce. The second thing is telemedics, so remote health services. And the third one is automation everywhere. Until now, CEOs, C-level people, government officials have invested into technology for one thing, in order to accelerate the way they do their businesses, the way it served to the citizens. And now we have to leave it into the hands of robot softwares supported by artificial intelligence. So what we have seen in China, in Shanghai, after they come back, the government has announced to all the companies, our economy will be based on online economy. So do whatever you do to create online economy for small, medium businesses, large companies, do it for our country. And online economy meaning 5G, artificial intelligence, and big data. And now I'm trying to reach out to the Digital Europe paper, Digital Europe strategy. And it's again, when I look at the draft of the paper, it again talks about all the countries in Europe will be having 5G until the end of the year. 5G, okay, something is important. 5G is totally controversial. As many people have known, 5G is kind of fueling up the coronavirus. I mean, this is really a story which nobody should be believing in, but we should be all investing into 5G just in order to create examples like autonomous cars, better farming, etc. Everything will be available with possibly 5G. Again, Europe talks about artificial intelligence. Again, Europe talks about big data. So COVID-19 recovery will be digital, and I'm sure Azerbaijan will be following the same path and will be a role model like it has been during the COVID-19 cases to the rest of the world. So congratulations once again.
Realizations of yours, especially that, yes, so many companies already had these digital transformation plans, and COVID-19, as horrible as it is, it's accelerated some change for good. Once again, relying on these cutting edge technologies whose capabilities, I think none of us really appreciated. I don't think I ever want to reopen my office. So I don't want to, this is my office. I don't want to leave. Thank you, Tansu.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to shift now to Mr. Admir Shakhmanovic, who's Director General for International Cooperation and Assistance Programs in the Ministry of Public Administration of Montenegro. I think you too, Mr. Shakhmanovic, are going to talk a bit about this transformation in a way to the point of citizens of Montenegro using these digital services and e-government more and more. And you have a background, a strong background in public administration reform. So I would love it if you'll tell us whatever you wish, but can you give us Montenegro's perspective on this adaptation of new technology, artificial intelligence, new ideas to public administration reform to serve people in this COVID-19 era? Please.
Thank you, Matthew. Hello from my side as well, and greetings from Montenegro. I hope you can all hear me well. Today, when all governments are in the middle of pandemic crisis, Montenegro is just a part of the whole system facing with a new reality. Public administrations have been under increased pressure, and now it's more than ever important to ensure continuity in the services to citizens. As safety procedures increased and further isolation measures enhanced, governments started the process of rethinking working patterns, service provisions, and communication methods with citizens and as well businesses. Although we are faced with the fact that physical separation reminds us how far apart we really are from each other, at the same time we discover how dependent we are on each other. Here in Montenegro, we are aware of how important it is to be connected both at the institutional level with our country, and economy, public, and also at the international level. Such this situation came to us as a reminder, as a lesson for us to learn that we need to persist on this path of reform. Through this process, we are aware that one of the key roles is played by digital transformation. And this pandemic has turned us even more to IT technologies that help us stay connected. And today's forum is also a proof of that. The fact is that COVID-19 have brought people to the possibility to be better, more solitary, to citizens brought the obligations to change their established habits of behavior. And to us in the public administration, it brought to react quickly and to be innovative. In this regard, we are witnessing that reform and digitalization are not only what we are striving to maintain and develop today, but they are our future, our tomorrow. This situation, new for all of us, show us that a united Montenegro can do a lot, and that the citizens are aware of the importance of digitalization, which is becoming an invisible part of their daily lives. In our Ministry of Public Administration, we especially nurture these values, and that is why today we especially emphasize numerous projects in the field of digitalization. Some of them we have already started, and others we need to do in the future. The dawns come after the greatest darkness, and that is how we see this reality. The pandemic influenced both us in the public administration area and others to accept the new ways of communication and to switch from the counters to the electronic way of dealing. In this crisis, digitalization has traditional ways of communication and work. Now, many processes are running entirely electronically in all areas. Although our crisis. Existing services have gained more importance during the crisis, used by the citizens, mostly in the area of health, education, and finances. This is why we see that this hour today as well as tomorrow. The available data monitored through the e-government portal show an increase of the usage of services provided electronically by around 20%. Also, the data show that the number of electronic requests via email or other communications for those services that are not on the government portal has increased by around 25%. We expect that after the remission of actual measures, the citizens will recognize the benefits offered by digitalization and keep the habit to perform electronically their rights and obligations, and that we in public administration will respond to their needs through the further projects also. In the coming period, which we recognize as a crucial, both at the central and local level, we need to use the current positive trend of e-services used by citizens and businesses to improve these services and to work on the implementation to complete services delivery electronically in general. The usage of e-services and the usage of IT communication in general has been a core of being of every citizen's in past 2 months. Because of this connection with each other's, we have improved online businesses in finance, health, education, as well in other fields and through other aspects of life, representing a powerful guide to the further development of this sector. In this regard, we are aware of the whole situation, as well of the trends of future development that should accelerate the removing of the gap on all levels, which is a necessity after this pandemic that forcibly stopped us to see where we are, what we have, and what is before us that we need to do. Even if we want to continue where we were before the pandemic, we can't, because nothing is the same anymore. COVID, as a good parent who gives us a tailwind, literally pushing us to develop further on our path. And our path is the path of modern public administration, the path of digital transformation. All this deeply affects the way we should continue through our future activities. On the one hand, we save, while on the other hand, a new future levels of communication, new channels for using offered platforms, electronic payment, online meetings, video conference, e-commerce, e-health, every package of digital solutions help us to perceive the work processes, as well as the system of society as a whole, on a level that we could not imagine just a few months ago. Greater opportunities are opening up for employees in public administration through the distance work from its home that is proven as efficient, and employees are able to get more comfort and to reduce living costs without lowering their work results. The public administration is aware that about the necessity of the following this new wave and setting goals according to the principles, from an old model of optimization to the digital optimization model, upgrading of existing infrastructure, digitalization that we can trust to, in new services for new age. We are aware that from this position, the goals we settle maybe look like illusion for somebody's point of view. But our ministry is already working on new strategic solutions for the period till 2025 in order to achieve these goals. Public administration reform strategy and digital transformation strategy should identify key short-term and long-term goals in public administration. So, also, through the realization of the already started projects and the beginning of the new ones, the goal is to reach the paperless stage where all institutions will exchange data electronically. Furthermore, in addition to the new existing services on the e-government portal, we plan to implement a whole set of new e-services by the end of this year. And let me emphasize also that the new government webpage will become a modern user environment where citizens and businesses will be able to get all information about public administration activities. We are sure that not only the nature, but the whole society is getting benefits from this pandemic situation, and we need to be smart and to keep this spirit of new connectivity between each others. The new level of personal public development, the new digital world is opening before of all of us. I would like to conclude my today's addressing with a quote: never waste a good crisis. Let's use the best of it. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shakunovich. Yes, I have to always use a crisis to find something good in it. And Bill Gates is famous for often berating his own employees if they're not making enough mistakes in creating a crisis, because he says you're not trying hard enough. And optimization is something that you touched upon a couple of times. As I was reflecting on your words, I realized, yeah, the deliverability of these services by governments, or as we were talking about with Ian and Tansu, our ability to connect and communicate with people in ways that don't require us to get out of our chairs. That's allowing us to optimize our time, and optimize our lives, optimize the deliverability of services to citizens. And that's, I think, a great segue to our, I guess, our final speaker, Dr. Enzo Maria Lefebvre, who I think what you're going to tell us about is how to harness artificial intelligence, but without forgetting, as you put it, about fundamental human rights. And you're a perfect person to discuss that. You're a project leader in the EU's Commission's Department for Informatics. You're the author 2 years ago of an Italian government paper on the use of artificial intelligence in the service of its citizens. And you've been thinking big thoughts, not only at the Commission, but also at your university, where you are adjunct professor of digital governance at the Università degli Studi della Tuscia. So, Mr. Lefebvre, Professor Lefebvre, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. And I would like to take the opportunity to find in a way the capacity to thank ASAN for inviting me, and for the government of Azerbaijan. I've been visiting ASAN in my previous position at the Italian government in the Agency for Digital Italy, together with the Italian ambassador. And I really appreciated a lot the digital pace that Azerbaijan has been leading forward. But as a professor, in a way, in my background and my academic, I wanted to share just a few slides in order to accompany through the message that I would like to deliver. And in fact, what I will be focusing on is on the emerging technologies at the service of the citizens, in a way, as the previous speakers, but as well as Vincenzo Acquaro yesterday in the other panels underlined, is the fact that, and I think everyone is consent on this, we do have an incredible advancement of how emerging technologies are helping us, not just in the COVID crisis, but to deal with everything. And for sure, one of the things that I want to remark always, and I do remind it to my students, but as well to everyone that I speak to, is that I take this very important reference. Is technology is capable of doing great things, but it doesn't want to do great things. It doesn't want anything. So the point is that it takes part of all of us. It takes our values and our commitments to our families, to our neighborhoods, and to our communities, our love of beauty and belief that all our faiths are interconnected, our decency and our kindness. So this is exactly what is technology for, and it's up to us to determine what we are using it for. And of course, one of the things that emerges more and more is that as often everyone thinks that public institutions are always late, this is not really the case. I think that this crisis has proved that in a way we can, as public institutions, bring forward a message. The fact that we do not are not left behind the process of of emerging technologies and of digitalization in general. Of course, reference has been taken to artificial intelligence. The three main things that artificial intelligence has been exploring and has been using forward in the last few years is exactly the issues related to health, the issues related to language recognition and recognition in general, and as well, I would say everything that is connected to logistics. This is extremely important, I think, and has proven to be extremely effective as well. We can go up to the very maximized situation of using right now emerging technologies for contact tracing that several speakers during this forum have indeed explored. But this is one of the key elements that we have around ourselves in exploring technology and emerging technologies in general, is that we need to have a code of ethical behavior in trying to use those technologies. I don't believe ethics is linked to the technology itself. This is actually something impossible to have, because we have to rely on the fact that technology itself, as artificial intelligence, for example, but even blockchain and quantum computing are not yet mature enough to have already rules. So what we do have is the necessity to pose ethical reflections on the products linked to those technologies and not to the technology itself. And of course, one of the key elements around this is data, is the governance of data. We need to reflect a lot on the governance of data, because this is where, before, I think there was the expression on the fact that artificial intelligence is going to be our fuel. I think that artificial intelligence is our car, and data is our fuel. And data is the fuel of how we will better be able to address pandemics, but as well challenges deriving from the economic meltdown that we are facing at the moment. And this, of course, requires change. This requires change by design in the way we actually process our governments, in the way we govern, but as well in the way we actually integrate all the possible I would say processes for a better understanding of how we need to deal with the emerging technologies. And this is something that Jan was expressing at the beginning of his speech. Everything needs to be human-centered. The human-centered approach is what is going to save us in terms of confronting with pandemics and everything else that is to come forward. Of course, one of the things that we have explored, myself, I was the coordinator actually of the OECD working group on emerging technologies in the public sector. And in last September, we published a working paper on exactly on the state of the art of emerging technologies at world level. And one of the things that we came across is the fact that governments have indeed a role to play, but they are not to be alone. I think that in here, the five complexity of the Alice is extremely important. We need to rely on governments. We need to rely on civil society. We need to rely on the private sector. We need to rely on the academia. But for and foremost, we need to rely on the capacity of the international organizations to put forward common agreements on how to proceed. And this is a very brief analysis of what we were before the start of the pandemic in terms of artificial intelligence. I know that the slides are very small, but just think about the colors of the word. We have part of the word that is still gray. They don't have a specific artificial intelligence strategy, and they need to actually empower that in order to be able to then govern better, not just artificial intelligence, but everything else that is connected to emerging technologies. Of course, the reference was said on the European guidelines. I think the European guidelines for trustworthy AI, but as well the new data governance framework that the European Union has put forward are to be conceived as guidelines that could really serve every other country. And I actually have seen a lot of those in any of the countries that are present in this forum in different forms, but indeed extremely important. If, as you reminded the Italian task force, the Italian task force was an exceptional case at the moment, because in 2008 they came forward with a specific task force on the public sector capacity to deploy artificial intelligence. And this is extremely important in terms of visions, because the rules that apply to the public sector are not the ones that apply to the private sector for sure. We need a combination of the two, but of course, those are extremely integrated in the core values of fundamental rights. And of course, one of the things that on point 7, if you see, is the issue of preventing inequalities as a major point and challenge that is connected to the absorption of emerging technologies in the public sector. As well, the fact that we have to empower human capacity and connect technology with the human being. Just to come to the core of this panel, one of the things that we need to focus on today is the sustainability. I think that the minister rightly said that we need to address the challenge of what the world will need to look like in the next future. And this is something that we can take the opportunity of the pandemic to actually regulate better the capacity of a sustainable development. Yesterday, Mr. Aquaro exactly pointed out this coming from the UN system. And I think that just to mark down, technology, science, and capacity building are the major pillars of the means of implementations of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we need to empower our governance of those issues in order to be able to, I would say, to move forward. And again, I'm sorry if this has taken 2 minutes more than what I was planned, but indeed I think that it summarizes a bit everything that has been collected by the various presentations, naming the national capacity to do so, but as well the visionary of the private sector in dealing with the pandemic thanks to technology.
Wow, thank you, Professor Lefebvre. Yeah, I'm glad you took a couple extra minutes. It didn't seem like you spoke very long. And you're right, your presentation kind of pulled it all together. And so I'm delivering my concluding remarks now, because we have a closing session. And I just want to say, again, I think back at what we just heard from these super bright people. What are the lessons? Number one, we shouldn't be so afraid, as many people are, of AI, of technology, of robotics. A lot of people in my circles are afraid that the machines are going to take over. You hear that a lot in the United States. No, as long as we do what you have all said, we plan for the often unplannable, we're prepared, we execute, as Ian was saying, we harness technology, we innovate everything we do with that technology, from the way we go to work and do our work to how we deliver public services. And the most important thing is we keep the human being at the center of everything. And we develop the rules, the ethical guidelines to make sure that that is what happens. So I leave this discussion that at first I thought was going to be kind of frightening, uplifted, enthused, and I just want to get on with the rest of my business once we're done here and begin applying these lessons immediately. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Madam Minister, in particular, for being such a gracious host, officially, unofficially. Thank you all for the clarity of your presentations and the wisdom you imparted. And so I guess I am closing this panel discussion reluctantly. Also, I need to tell everybody we're going to begin the closing session right away, and I am inviting, I guess, to the stage as well, Mr. John Mary Kauzia, he is the Chief of Public Service Innovation at the United Nations. So I'm not quite sure how these transitions work, so I'm going to be quiet now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Thanks a lot, everybody, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Good session. I liked it a lot. Thank you, Mr. Bryza.
Thanks, Mr. Jafarli. It's an honor.
Thank you.
And
Hi,
fun.
Shara.
I thought you were the ones who had blocked me. You can see me? Okay, good. Hello.
Hello, Mr. Kabza.
How are you doing? I can't see myself, so I'm not sure I'm with you. Can you see me?
We can see your good self. I think the
Very
same
good.
others.
That was a very good session. I followed the last session very well.
Thank you. It's very nice to hear. Very kind of you. I loved it. Great people.
Yeah.
Present company excluded.
So, Asad, how do we proceed?
So you can start, Mr. Kabza, our closing ceremony, and then we can pass accordingly.
Okay. Thank you very much. I've just followed the last session. Unfortunately, through a mishap in my connections, I missed the previous one. The one before the one that has just ended. So there is a gap in my coverage of how the entire forum progressed. But I must thank ASAN, the whole team, for having put all this together. I think what I'm going to do, is just to give comments in terms of wrap up, really, and then maybe at the end I will be more protocol diplomatic to thank all the parties that have contributed to the success of this. Now, I would want, from what I have heard, I would want to put a blanket to the whole thing and say, let us not forget that the fight against COVID-19 and the pandemic must be part and parcel of the struggle to implement the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Because the brutality of the attack of this virus is likely to turn our efforts away from these goals. And yet we know that if the world turns away from those goals, from the 2030 agenda, then this virus or any other virus or any other crisis will find it very easy to attack us from now or in the future. Let's remind ourselves what this actually means. Remember, the SAT agenda has got two sets of things: 17 sustainable development goals on one hand, which must be achieved in order to make life of societies better. Or should I use the word transformed? That's one set, the 17 goals. But besides the 17 goals, there are the values that are enshrined in the 2030 agenda documents, agreed by all leaders of 193 member states of the United Nations. And these values and principles themselves alone make what we would call a good society. The values of inclusion, leaving no one behind, social, economic, and ecological equity, innovation, accountability, resilience, effectiveness. If you get societies that are made of these values, then those societies are difficult to attack. Whether you are talking of physical attack or this kind of attack that we have had with the COVID-19. I just wanted to inject in this. These are not separate fights. The fight against COVID-19 and the fight to achieve the SDGs, these are not separate. When your house catches fire, you don't abandon the kids. Your job, first and foremost, is to look after your kids. The fact that now the house is on fire does not mean that you leave the kids. In fact, that's the moment you must remember you have to look after the kids. So let us not abandon the Sustainable Development Goals, the values enshrined in the 2030 Agenda, just because we are being attacked by this COVID-19 virus. It is precisely because of the weaknesses in society's failure to achieve what is enshrined in the 2030 Agenda that this COVID-19 virus is attacking effectively. It has revealed some of the weaknesses in societies, including inequality. Not only has it revealed that, it has even increased it. So we should bear that in mind. That was my first point. The second one is that everywhere, I have never seen a frantic search for a vaccine against anything. Maybe because when I was young, I got vaccinated and I didn't know where those vaccines came from. But I have never seen this. Everywhere, even poor countries, the ones which we think are not inventive, are struggling so hard to make sure that they get a vaccine against this. Now, I want to say this, and I picked this from the presentations. It's not like I'm departing. Yes, there must be a vaccine, but the vaccine against this virus is a vaccine in individuals. If they do that, I don't get it if I get vaccinated. My kids don't get if they get vaccinated. But we need a vaccine in society. And what is that vaccine? Because remember, the virus is one thing, it causes a sickness, but it has disrupted society in terms of economics, in terms of social life. And we need a vaccine for that. And what is that vaccine? That vaccine is resilience. That vaccine is the ability of societies to foresee problems and find solutions to those problems before they become disasters. From what I have been hearing in this forum and all the discussions going on around the world about this, many societies were not prepared. Even the governments which are saying we have succeeded, they still get criticized for not being prepared. Now that preparedness is part of what makes societies resilient. And resilience is one of the values and principles enshrined in the 2030 Agenda. So as we look for the vaccine against the virus, which attacks individuals, we must strengthen societies in terms of resilience, because that's the vaccine for the society. That was my second point as a wrap up. The third one has to do with what now we have agreed, that it is a mandatory responsibility of government through its public services to ensure continuity of the delivery of critical services. As you know, the debates that had been going since the 1970s, you remember the time of Margaret Thatcher and the time of Ronald Reagan here, where putting public sector as a prominent actor in socioeconomic development was seen as not so good. But now we are saying it is very critical for governments to provide services to people. And this we must emphasize. However, and maybe we don't have time to discuss this, we are closing, but I want to inject in this. As we do that, we must avoid creating what I call the dependency syndrome in society, because dependency syndrome kills initiative, kills creativity, and that's not what is good for innovation. I think Azad can support me on this. He heads an institution that is well known for being innovative. If you have got a society that has this dependency syndrome, that only looks at government to provide or nothing is done, then you have killed the initiative of individuals, you have killed the spirit of creativity, and these two are the ones which drive innovation. So as we push for governments to provide services during this pandemic and protect societies, we must do it in such a way that we don't create this dependency syndrome, because that can be dangerous to progress in post-COVID. Last point, it has to do with change. Remember, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is a strategy for transforming the world. Now, transformation is a process of profound change. And there is a tendency for people to say that people fear change. I want to put doubt on this. People don't fear change. From the day you are born, you suffer change up to the day you die. We don't fear change. In fact, we drive change by nature. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here at age 63. I would be fearing all these changes that have taken place in my life. But on the contrary, I've been driving them. We don't fear change. What we fear is unplanned change. And the transformation the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development talks about is planned change. Because when change is not planned, it becomes chaos in people's lives. And that's what this COVID pandemic has done. But it comes back to the point of resilience and preparedness. When societies are ready for planned change, then you can't talk of fear for change. Instead of saying people fear change, let us make plans, let us communicate, let us educate, let us create awareness, then the changes we introduce will not be resisted. And associated with this is the strategic use of technology, whether it is ICT or artificial intelligence, all these emerging things. Yes, in the minds of people, some people fear, but that's because they fear the unknown. But once awareness of their usefulness is created, then the fear goes away. So part of the duties of the public servant of today now is to make sure that the people that we serve are constantly aware of the transformational and useful advantages of using technology to influence their lives through improved public services. We should not stigmatize societies that they fear these technological changes. We should take it as our duties as public servants to explain to the populations that there are these emerging technologies, and if we could use them effectively, our work will be easy and the benefits to societies will be easy. Then these technologies will not be feared. I think, there have been so many presentations, and I don't think I can go beyond that in picking out the messages that I should have used as just a closing statement. I will just stop there. Thank all the presenters working in this uncharted waters of online meetings. I think it was successful. I'd like to thank the government of Azerbaijan and ASAN for putting it together. I think it has been wonderful. I pass this over to you, Azad.
Thank you, Mr. Kauzia. Distinguished participants of the forum, Mr. Kauzia, ladies and gentlemen, it was a sense of deep satisfaction that I am addressing this auditorium at the closing session of the Global Web Forum organized and initiated by ASAN, State Agency for Public Services and Social Innovations under the President of Azerbaijan. And we were very delighted to have spent 2 outstanding days with the participants from all over the world, international organizations, individual governments, experts and academicians. And taking this advantage, I'd like to once again to thank them for their very valuable contribution to the work of the forum and for their dedication to the topics, for their very active involvement to the discussions and brainstorming that have taken place within the ambits of this forum. Well, given the significance of this event in its kind, the ASAN Global Web Forum has created really the big opportunities in order to develop our thoughts, but also subsequent actions on the topics of public administration, public service delivery, innovations, smart solutions, the logistical issues that are all very important and part and parcel in the time of the pandemic. So the very last point that I wanted to depict from Mr. Kauzia was again a kind of the demonstration and the manifestation of our right choice and timeliness to organize such an event, to bring together the people from different continents, from different organizations, to listen to different perspectives and to see how we can jointly step ahead in order to certainly overcome all the challenges that have emanated from the pandemic. So I have to conclude that the ASAN Global Web Forum was very rich in its content. We had 6 sessions. The opening session, which was kind of high-level segment. Then we had 4 thematic sessions, followed by the closing session that we have entered now. And participants from more than 25 countries altogether have attended this very forum in order to share their views, how to drive the change, how to make the sense, how to influence the change, given the current certain circumstances, how to benefit from the agility and adaptive strategies in this very context, and they have been all highly appreciated. At the opening session, Mr. Ulvi Mehdiyev, the chairman of the state agency, made a speech and addressed the auditorium in his capacity of the representative of the initiating site, and he passed through all the spectrum of the issues, ranging from the medical issues, internal production, supply, and certainly touching upon the very important elements of the public service delivery. And also he suggested very complete elements for the public service delivery that should be equally accessible, transparent, and user-friendly during the pandemics in order to meet all the expectations. And certainly we were also very delighted to listen to the Director General of ISESCO, Mr. Salim Al-Malik, to share with us the actions and activities that are emanating from the 57 member states of the ISESCO organization. Another very interesting point came up from the representatives of European External Service Action by Mr. Luc Devine, and he shared with us the European perspective, and then African perspective has been shared by Mr. Mbassi, the Secretary General of the United States and local governments in Africa. It was very, very optimistic to hear that even these days of pandemic, the states still spare no efforts in order to continue their cooperation, and they share the best experiences. And the Azerbaijan experience already shared and applied in different countries, including in Kazakhstan and in other friendly countries, was the sign of another very good example how the states and governments are cooperating in time of pandemic. Well, the first panel was about the public service delivery, its importance and its significance to be rendered in an unhindered and unimpeded environment. The second one was really very interesting about the social innovations and smart solutions, especially given the limitations and restrictions that we have been all passing through. The third one was not less important. It was about the exchange of the transfer of the goods and about the international trade and logistics. And finally, in the last panel, the speakers talked about long-term solutions which can shape the post-pandemic world. So, dear participants, our deliberations over the past 2 days have covered a wide range of issues and our common preoccupations. So, I want to just depict some quotes from the speakers. We are living through the forced digitalization period of the humankind. If before things were taking years to build up, today they are taking months, even weeks. This has been mentioned by Mr. Mevsumov, Assistant to the President of Azerbaijan, reiterating the importance of digitalization, e-governance and smart solutions today, but also in a post-pandemic context. And we witness a number of concerns that are especially challenging for the population during the fight against COVID-19. Successful governance has been particularly discernible in the establishment of effective mechanisms, as well as in the sustainable delivery of public services to the citizens in the time of spread of COVID-19 without any break. And we believe that the ASAN Web Forum has been an example of novelties in the field of public administration, public management, public service delivery, and we also got the very good stimulus to unite our participants and to receive their contributions despite the difference of time zones. In this regard, we believe that the ASAN Global Web Forum has already laid the foundation of a new platform. Its sustainable follow-up is driven from the realities of innovation and data. So I have another very quote in order to contextualize this very conclusion. Mr. Godbrende, the President of the World Economic Forum, mentioned in his opening speech and I'm quoting, that our actions must match the nature of this challenge. Only coordinated, multi-stakeholder action by business, governments, and international organizations at exceptional scale and speed can mitigate the impact of this unprecedented crisis and pave the way toward recovery. End of the quote. And we are now more than ever convinced that this forum should be organized in the next years to recognize and spread our practices, successful solutions, and to get the room for their replication by the other states. There were also other clear messages that we registered during the event concerning the solidarity and sharing the best practices, as well as transfer of knowledge, will be all able to promote. And as mentioned by the representative of Montenegro, by Mr. Admir during the first panel, we are now dependent on each other more than ever. And we need to connect both at institutional and international level. This is the only path to make a fundamental change in the world. So, dear friends, the safety and prosperity of our peoples have been undermined by pandemic. It impeded economic development and social well-being. However, I'm very glad to note that all the participants of the forum shared the views and singled out the necessity for cooperation. And I believe we're ready to end the harmful consequences of the pandemic, and we have the capacity and ambition to achieve. Here, there's another quote by the UNDP administrator, Mr. Steiner, which highlighted that these are the important lessons learned to benefit in the future. As an international community, we should not fall apart, but despite our differences, we should come together and put privacy on the notion of cooperation. On that note in the mind, I will conclude by thanking all again for making this forum happen and for commitment in spearheading the enhancement of public service delivery, smart solutions, and international cooperation. We believe that the pandemic will soon be over, but our results and contributions will assist us to build a safer world in the coming months and year. The work of the forum is over, but we all stay tuned for the future cooperation. Here, at this very point, I want to once again to articulate that all the conclusions by Mr. Jean-Marie Cavuzia are well taken, and I can't agree more that this is exactly the time when we need to demonstrate the agility, the adaptive decision making. We need to drive, but also to influence the change. The change that will be adapted to the best expectations of our citizens and peoples, that will make their life easier and happier. And at this very juncture, I'd also like to congratulate the ASAN team for being courageous enough to opt for the live stream and web forum, given the differences in the time zone. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention. Thank you for all your contributions, for your dedication to the topic, for their friendly spirit, and stay safe and healthy. Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. We don't
Thank
hear
you so much, everybody. Take care.
Microphone, Mr. Kavuzia?
Okay, I think now you can hear me.
Yes.
You see, now this is what I call uncharted waters. They're dealing with the unknown, not used to the technology. What remains is really for us to congratulate, as I said, first the government of Azerbaijan, who has hosted us via the web. Very good. Second, Azad and your team, I think you have done, first of all, an excellent job in initiating this and then going through up to the end of it. I would want, I think, on behalf of all those who participated in it, to express appreciation of this initiative and effective execution. Third, and please pass our appreciation to the chairman. He joined us yesterday, made very excellent presentations. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Uh, Last but not least, all the presenters, all the excellent presentations must have taken a lot of time to prepare. And the sacrifice, I can say this because today I got out of bed at 3, so I imagine many people probably didn't even sleep. And that's a sacrifice for which we really must thank everyone. But let's put this really in the context of what it is to serve, because I guess whether we are in the private sector or public sector or civil society, we are actually serving. Personally, I have been a public servant all my life, right from the day I stepped out of university. Even now at the international level, I'm still a public servant. And something that we always call service before self, which is a polite way of talking about the sacrifice a public service must undergo in order to serve the public. As I said yesterday, some public servants have died during this pandemic trying to save populations from the scourge of this virus. Whether you are talking of doctors in hospitals, nurses, or medical workers, whether you are talking of policemen keeping law and order in this period of chaos, people who look after the elderly in elderly nursing homes, there have been a lot of sacrifices. And so the sacrifice you have made to prepare these presentations and then readjust your sleeping schedule to make sure that the presentations are made and the whole forum is followed and attended should be put in that context and very highly appreciated. I've been very happy to be part of this, and I feel privileged to have been invited to be a moderator and given opportunity to give these closing remarks. I thank you very much, and I think now concluded and closed this successful forum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kauzia. I'd like once again to thank each and every participant. Without you all, this very forum wouldn't happen, and it wouldn't get all this very valuable, very thought-provoking, and also very, I would say, promising conclusions and findings. And we found the common denominators. We registered particular actions by the individual governments. We found the new room for cooperation regime-wise and beyond. And I think this is the stimulus. This is the good, very product of out of this forum. And I think in that sense, we can tell that yes, we serve the purpose. And again, I'd like to thank all the people, including those that I know long ago, like Mr. Redmir, your good self, and also Mr. Enzo and others that have really accepted this very invitation and enriched this very discussion and brainstorming. Thank you very much again, and we will look forward to receiving your good self in this very format in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you and goodbye. Stay safe.
Thank you. Stay safe.